Hey, my beautiful Libra souls, I'm really glad you're here with me today. I don't know why exactly, but the energy around Libra right now feels different somehow. A little lighter, a little clearer. Almost like after such a long season of emotional noise and inner confusion, you're finally starting to hear yourself again. There's a very quiet shift happening in your life right now. Not loud, not dramatic. Not something you feel the need to prove to anybody, but deep enough to slowly change the way you see things and maybe even the way you see yourself. And honestly, that feels like the energy moving with Libra as you step out of the end of this month and into the next chapter ahead. And if you're new here, welcome. Take a slow breath with me for a moment. Let's open up this space together and see what the tarot cards want to share with Libra right now. There's something very different about Libra's energy right now. Not loud. Not the kind of change that flips your whole life upside down overnight. It feels more like one of those quiet moments when you're sitting alone in a familiar room, soft yellow light resting against the wall, your phone buzzing every now and then somewhere on the other side of the couch. And for the first time in a really long time, your mind doesn't feel like chasing everything anymore. There's a stillness returning to you, Libra. And strangely enough, it's inside that stillness that things are starting to make more sense. The Justice card comes through here with a very mature energy, not to make you colder, and not to tell you that you need to cut everyone out of your life. It feels more like the moment you begin realizing not everything you've been trying to hold on to truly belongs to you anymore. Libra, you've always been deeply sensitive to other people's emotions. Sometimes the energy in a room shifts just slightly, and somehow you're the first one to feel it. And maybe because of that, for a long time, you got used to adjusting yourself just to keep the peace. Keeping conversations from getting too tense, making sure nobody feels hurt, trying to make everything seem fine, even when you were exhausted inside. But lately, I think Libra has started realizing something very small, but very important. Real peace doesn't come from constantly trying to make everybody else comfortable. And once that realization settles in, something inside you quietly begins to change. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way that needs to be announced to the world, but in those subtle little moments where you start replying to messages a little slower, spending more time alone, or suddenly feeling like certain conversations just don't match your energy anymore. The Ace of Swords card feels like fresh air moving through your mind after months of emotional noise. And honestly, I don't think this kind of clarity arrives all at once. It feels more like the sky after a long storm, slowly getting brighter little by little, until eventually you can finally see the road ahead of you again instead of only seeing your own emotional overwhelm. Maybe lately Libra has started asking different questions. Does this still bring me peace? Do I truly want to keep fighting for this connection? Or am I just afraid of disappointing someone? And I think that's where your intuition begins getting stronger. Not in some overly mystical way. More like your body starting to react more honestly to things around you. You walk into a place and instantly feel uncomfortable. You read a message and somehow know the energy behind it isn't the same anymore. Or sometimes, it's just this hard to explain feeling that you need more quiet than you used to. The Moon card carries such a deep emotional energy here. There are feelings you still can't fully name yet. Emotions still floating somewhere between intuition and silence. But instead of forcing yourself to figure everything out right now, I think Libra is slowly learning how to sit with those feelings a little longer. Not rushing to fix everything anymore. Not rushing to find answers for every emotion. Just listening. And strangely enough, the quieter things become, the more clearly you begin hearing yourself again. I don't think this is the chapter where everything around you suddenly becomes perfect. But I do think this is the chapter where Libra starts seeing life through different eyes. Softer eyes, clearer eyes, more honest eyes. There's a new perspective slowly opening inside you right now. Quietly, but deeply enough to change the way you walk into the days ahead. And honestly, this feels like only the beginning. After spending so much time trying to keep everything balanced for everybody else, Libra finally seems to be learning how to return to balance within themselves first. And honestly, this feels like where the Temperance card starts coming through very clearly. Not as some huge life change that suddenly transforms everything overnight. It feels smaller than that, softer than that. Just little everyday moments that somehow make your heart feel a little lighter again. Maybe it's turning your phone off earlier than you used to. Maybe it's those evenings where you don't feel like answering 100 messages anymore. Or sometimes, it's simply sitting quietly near the window, putting on soft music, and finally letting your mind breathe after carrying everybody else's emotions for way too long. And honestly, I think Libra has been tired in a way that's hard to explain. Not always tired from work, More like the exhaustion that comes from constantly being the understanding one, the gentle one, the one trying to keep everything from falling apart. And what moves me the most about this energy is that Libra no longer seems interested in fighting their own emotions anymore. There's a softness happening inside you now, almost like after months of living in a constant low-level tension, your body is finally asking you to slow down. The Queen of Cups card carries such a gentle feeling here. It makes me picture someone sitting alone in the kitchen late at night, soft yellow light reflecting off a half-finished glass of water, no longer trying to analyze every little thing, just quietly feeling what their heart actually needs. And maybe lately, Libra has started realizing healing doesn't always arrive through huge answers. Sometimes it comes from allowing yourself to rest without feeling guilty for it. Allowing yourself to disappear from certain conversations for a little while. Allowing yourself not to explain everything. Allowing yourself to say no to things that drain your energy, even if you used to tolerate them just to keep the peace. I think boundaries are becoming a really important lesson for Libra right now. But what's interesting is, they're no longer coming from anger. Not in a I'm shutting everybody out kind of way. It feels more like a very quiet maturity, where you begin understanding that not everyone deserves access to the peace you worked so hard to rebuild inside yourself. And honestly, that feels like a very deep kind of healing. Because Libra has always had this tendency to see the good in other people before seeing their own limits. You give more than you can realistically carry. And eventually, the body starts speaking on behalf of the heart. You feel exhausted faster. Certain conversations suddenly make you want silence afterward. Places that are too loud start feeling overwhelming in ways they never did before. But instead of forcing yourself back into the old version of who you were, I think Libra is finally listening to those signals now. Not trying to make yourself constantly available anymore. Not feeling responsible for rescuing everyone else from their emotions. And strangely enough, the more you protect your energy, the softer you actually become. Not colder, not distant, just more peaceful. The Justice card returns here almost like a gentle reminder that real balance isn't about dividing your energy equally between everybody else. It's when there's no longer chaos inside you every time you have to choose between yourself and someone else. And I think Libra is entering a season of learning how to prioritize peace without feeling selfish for needing it. And honestly, this energy makes me think of very slow mornings. The kind where sunlight barely touches the curtains, your phone is still face down on the table. Nobody needs anything from you for a few quiet minutes, and for the first time in a long time, you realize you don't have to rush into becoming the version of yourself everybody expects. Just being yourself feels light enough. And I think Libra is slowly rebuilding harmony in life that way. Not dramatically, not by changing the entire world around you overnight. Just little by little, choosing the things that calm your mind instead of tightening it. And maybe other people don't fully notice the shift yet. But honestly, I think your heart already does. There's a new version of you forming quietly inside all of this. Softer, slower, but also more real than ever before. And what's interesting is, as your inner world starts finding balance again, the way Libra sees relationships is beginning to change too. I don't think this is the kind of change that's making you colder toward the world. If anything, it feels like Libra is becoming more honest with their own energy. There are people you once tried so hard to hold on to, and now, after only a few minutes of conversation, you leave feeling drained. Not because they are bad people, and not necessarily because something huge happened between you. It's more like somewhere deep inside. Libra is beginning to realize that not every connection is meant to be carried forever. And honestly, this feels like where the Queen of Swords card comes through very clearly. Not as a harsh or intimidating energy. It feels more like the kind of clarity that only comes after being hurt too many times. Like someone who spent years trying to understand everybody else, finally beginning to understand themselves first. Libra has always had this ability to see multiple sides of a story. That's part of what makes you so gentle, so thoughtful, so emotionally aware. But sometimes, that same gift is also what kept you staying too long in places that no longer brought you peace. And lately, I feel like Libra has been having these very quiet moments with themselves. Like driving alone at the end of the day, the streets still crowded, red and gold lights reflecting against the windows, and suddenly realizing you no longer want to chase attention, validation, or half-hearted connections anymore. There's a very deep emotional maturity happening here. You no longer want to sit there wondering whether you matter enough to someone. No longer want to keep pouring energy into conversations that leave you emotionally exhausted afterward. And honestly, what I love most about this energy is that Libra isn't chasing anymore. not chasing the feeling of needing to be chosen, not trying to become enough just to make somebody stay. Instead, I think you're starting to ask a different question now. Does this place actually feel peaceful to me? And I know that sounds simple, but honestly, I think that question changes everything. The Four of Pentacles card feels like Libra learning how to protect their energy a little more than before. Not from selfishness, but from finally understanding that your heart deserves protection too. Some people only appear when they need something from you. Some environments keep your nervous system in a constant low state of alert, without you even realizing it. And Libra, through your own intuition, is beginning to feel those things more clearly than ever now. I really feel like this is a season where you become far more selective. Selective with where your time goes. Selective with who gets access to your private space. Even selective with which conversations you allow to stay in your mind late at night. Because once the mind has lived through enough emotional chaos, peace starts feeling sacred. And honestly, I think Libra is finally beginning to understand the value of that. The Empress card makes this whole energy feel incredibly beautiful, not guarded, not closed off. If anything, it feels like watching someone slowly bloom in the softest way possible. No longer needing to impress anyone. No longer needing to prove they're worthy of love. Because when someone truly reconnects with their inner value, their energy naturally changes the way the world responds to them. And Libra, your aura feels very different lately. Quieter, slower, but somehow far more magnetic. And what's beautiful about it is that this magnetism isn't coming from trying to be noticed. It's coming from finally feeling comfortable being yourself. Maybe you don't fully see it yet, but other people can feel it. They can feel that Libra no longer gets pulled into drama so easily, no longer reacts to everything immediately, no longer opens their heart just because they're afraid of loneliness. And honestly, this feels like a very mature kind of glow up, because some versions of us only appear after we learn how to walk away from the places that kept draining us. I keep seeing Libra reorganizing their space in this energy. Maybe it's a work desk, a corner of a room, an old playlist, or even relationships that have been around for too long but no longer make your heart feel light anymore. It's almost like you're unconsciously making room for a new version of yourself to enter your life. And strangely enough, the more you let go of what no longer fits, the closer you start feeling to yourself again. Less noise, less pressure to become somebody else. Just this very quiet feeling that you don't have to chase everything anymore. Because sometimes the most beautiful thing that can happen is when the heart finally stops running and chooses to stay with itself instead. And I think that's also the moment Libra's energy begins changing in a way that's honestly hard to put into words. Not the kind of glow up that suddenly makes everybody turn around and look at you. Not flashy, not loud, not trying too hard to stand out. It's more like the kind of change where people can simply feel that something about you is different when they're around you. And honestly, I think Libra has been stepping into a really beautiful energy lately. Softer than before, but somehow brighter too. The Star card comes through here with such a deep healing energy. Not because life suddenly became perfect overnight, but because after carrying so much emotional confusion for so long, Libra is finally starting to reconnect with their own light again. And maybe you don't fully see it yet, but real healing rarely arrives as one huge life-changing moment. Sometimes it shows up quietly, through small changes in the way you treat yourself every day, the way you speak to yourself more gently, the way you no longer force yourself to seem okay all the time. The way you're learning to rest before your body completely burns out. And strangely enough, when someone starts taking care of their inner energy again, their aura changes too. Libra feels very soft right now. Not tense, not constantly trying to prove something, not rushing to move faster than everyone else, just calm. Like someone who walks into a room and doesn't need to say much, but people still feel their presence somehow. And honestly, I think that's exactly what's happening with Libra. The Six of Wands card makes me feel like people are starting to see you differently now. But what's interesting is, this time Libra doesn't seem nearly as dependent on that validation anymore. Maybe in the past you needed to feel seen in order to believe you were moving in the right direction. Maybe you tried really hard to become the easy-to-love version of yourself, the easy-to-understand version, or the version that felt good enough to keep certain connections alive. But now, something inside you has shifted. And honestly, I don't think Libra is becoming colder at all. If anything, you're becoming quietly confident. The kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. Not needing to post constantly just to prove your life is okay. Not needing to always be present everywhere just to feel valuable. Just slowly becoming more comfortable inside your own energy. And honestly, That feels like one of the most beautiful forms of maturity. I keep seeing Libra moving slower during this season, not rushing everything anymore, not trying to force time to answer questions your heart is still learning how to understand. Maybe you're beginning to enjoy quieter mornings, nights with less noise, or even the feeling of being alone without immediately feeling lonely. The Sun card comes through here with such warm energy, not overwhelming, not blinding, more like soft sunlight moving through a window early in the morning, making the whole room feel gentler somehow. And honestly, I think Libra is slowly becoming that version of themselves, someone who doesn't need to force themselves to shine, because the peace inside them naturally makes them magnetic. And maybe the most beautiful part of all this is that the change no longer seems to come from the fear of being left behind. It comes from finally understanding that you don't have to move at full speed just to have value. You don't have to constantly become the most perfect version of yourself every single day. Some days, peace alone already feels like a very mature kind of happiness. And honestly, I think Libra has gone through a season that made you question yourself deeply. Moments where you wondered if maybe you were too sensitive, whether you were giving too much, whether you were trying too hard to hold on to things that no longer truly fit your life anymore. But looking at the energy now, I don't think Libra wants to keep fighting themselves anymore. There's a very gentle acceptance happening here. You're beginning to understand that maturity doesn't always mean becoming stronger in front of the world. Sometimes, it simply means finally allowing yourself to slow down without feeling guilty for it. And honestly, I think that's why Libra's energy feels so beautiful right now. Not because it's perfect, but because it feels like the beauty of someone who has lived through enough emotional chaos to finally start valuing inner peace more than anything else. And as that inner light slowly starts returning, I can feel Libra's heart beginning to open toward a very different kind of connection than before. It's no longer the kind of attraction that throws everything into emotional chaos overnight. Not the kind of feeling that keeps you awake at 2 a.m., trying to figure out what someone else is thinking. This feels slower, quieter, but somehow much deeper. And honestly, I don't think Libra is looking for love the same way anymore. After everything your heart has lived through, you no longer seem drawn to temporary excitement the way you once were. You're no longer chasing connections that leave you constantly wondering whether someone is going to stay or disappear. There's a really beautiful emotional maturity in the way Libra sees love right now. You're beginning to want a connection where you can actually be yourself, instead of constantly trying to become the perfect version of who you think someone else needs. And honestly, this feels like where the Two of Cups card appears, not in an overly dramatic way. It feels more like two people sitting beside each other in a quiet space, not trying to impress one another, but still feeling completely at ease together. There's something about this energy that feels very real to me, not because it's perfect, but because it doesn't require Libra to lose themselves in order to keep it alive. And honestly, I think that's what your heart has quietly been searching for all along. Someone who doesn't make you overthink every little thing. Someone who doesn't force you to read between every line. Someone who doesn't make you shrink yourself just to keep the peace. I really feel like someone is becoming drawn to Libra's energy right now. Not only because of your appearance, not only because of the softness people have always seen in you, but because of the peace you carry now after everything you've walked through. Some people enter our lives very loudly, but there are also connections that arrive like a small light in a dark room, not blinding, just warm enough to soften everything around it. And honestly, this energy feels more like that. The Lover's card makes me feel like Libra is learning how to connect through sincerity instead of just chemistry. And there's a huge difference between those two things. Chemistry can make the heart race very quickly, but sincerity is what makes someone feel safe enough to stay. And I think after so many emotional experiences, Libra understands that at a much deeper level now. You no longer want connections that are only beautiful in the beginning. You no longer want to constantly question whether someone's feelings are genuine. Honestly, I think your heart wants something softer now. A connection where two people can sit in silence and still feel close. Someone who calms your mind instead of constantly creating tension inside it. Someone who doesn't make you chase love just to feel worthy of receiving it. And what stands out to me the most is that Libra no longer feels rushed anymore. Maybe in the past you tried to hold on to certain connections simply because you were afraid of losing them. Maybe you gave too much too quickly because you believed that if you were gentle enough, everything would work out. But now, your energy feels different. There's a very mature pause inside the way Libra loves now. You observe more, you feel more, you listen to your intuition more. And strangely enough, that's exactly what makes your energy feel even more magnetic now. The Knight of Cups card comes through almost like a soft reminder that beautiful love doesn't always arrive through chaos. Sometimes it arrives very slowly, very quietly, so quietly that almost nobody notices it at first. Like someone remembering you in the smallest ways. A message arriving at the right moment after a long day. A look that makes you feel like you no longer have to pretend you're okay all the time. And honestly, I don't think Libra is stepping into a season of love that sweeps everything away like before. I think you're learning how to let love unfold more naturally now, without forcing it, without chasing, without trying to control the outcome. And maybe that's exactly why the romantic energy around Libra feels so beautiful right now. Because when someone finally begins feeling whole within themselves, they stop loving from the fear of being abandoned. They start loving from peace instead. And honestly, I think Libra's heart is slowly moving closer to that kind of connection now. But in order to truly open your heart to something new, sometimes we have to become brave enough to let go of the old version of ourselves first. And honestly, this feels like where the Death card carries a very deep energy in Libra's journey right now. I know a lot of people are afraid of the Death card, but truthfully, nothing about this energy feels frightening to me. It feels more like an old room finally having its windows opened after being closed for far too long. Fresh air slowly moving in, light touching corners you hadn't even noticed before. And somewhere in that moment, you realize you no longer want to live as the old version of yourself anymore. No longer wanting to stay trapped inside cycles that keep exhausting your spirit. No longer wanting to always be the person trying to hold everything together. And honestly, I think Libra tried very hard in the past. There were chapters where you stayed far longer than your heart could truly handle, simply because part of you hoped things would eventually change. There were connections you tried to save with every ounce of softness you had. But sometimes, maturity is finally understanding that not everything we love was meant to stay forever. And I think Libra is slowly beginning to accept that now, not in the painful way you once did, not desperately trying to hold on to things that already drifted out of your energy, just quietly letting go. It feels like sitting alone in your car after a long day, the city lights still glowing outside the windows. But for the first time in a very long time, you stop playing everything in your head trying to figure out what you did wrong. Because some stories don't end because you weren't enough. Sometimes a chapter simply completed the role it was meant to play in your life. And honestly, I think Libra is finally starting to see things through that softer lens now. The Eight of Cups card feels like you're walking away from a very old version of yourself. The version that always tried to understand everyone else before understanding their own heart. The version that stayed a little too long even after becoming emotionally exhausted. The version that believed love always had to involve sacrifice. And honestly, I don't think Libra is becoming emotionally numb at all. If anything, you're feeling things more deeply than ever before. But this time, you're no longer willing to abandon yourself in the process. And truthfully, that feels like a very beautiful kind of emotional maturity. Because there's a huge difference between closing your heart and finally learning how to protect it. And I think Libra is learning that little by little now. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. No longer chasing closure from people who never truly understood you in the first place. No longer staying awake late at night trying to save a connection that deep down, you already knew no longer belonged in your life. There's a very soft sadness in this energy. But strangely enough, it's no longer the kind of sadness that pulls you under. It feels more like the ending of an old season. You still remember it. There's still a little ache somewhere in your heart. But at the same time, you know you can't carry the old version of yourself into the next chapter anymore. And honestly, that feels like where the World card appears. Not as some huge dramatic ending. More like finally stepping out of a cycle that lasted far too long. I keep seeing Libra in a very mature energy here. Choosing peace over emotionally intense but unstable connections. Choosing clarity over mixed signals. Beginning to understand that just because something ended doesn't mean everything you gave to it was meaningless. Some people enter our lives to teach us how to love. Some chapters arrive to teach us how to let go. And honestly, I think Libra has learned both lessons very deeply lately. And maybe the most beautiful thing about the version of you that's emerging now is that you no longer want to become the person you used to be. No longer wanting to return to the days where everyone else's emotions came before your own. No longer wanting to sacrifice your peace just to keep a connection alive. There's a very quiet transformation happening inside Libra now. You're walking lighter, thinking less about what you lost, slowly creating more space for the things that truly belong to the energy you carry now. And honestly, when an old chapter finally closes in peace like this, the heart slowly begins making room for an entirely new path ahead. Even if Libra can't fully see the whole picture ahead right now, honestly, I don't think that feels as frightening as it once did. Because somewhere along the journey of growing up emotionally, we start realizing that not every door needs to be completely visible before we walk through it. Sometimes, intuition only brushes against the heart very softly. Just a quiet feeling that it's time to keep moving forward, even if you don't fully know where the road is leading yet. And honestly, this feels like where the Wheel of Fortune card appears. Not like some dramatic turning point where life changes in a single instant. It feels more like something inside you beginning to shift before the outside world has fully caught up yet. Maybe Libra has gone through a few confusing detours lately. Plans that once seemed certain suddenly moved in a completely different direction. Connections you thought would stay slowly drifted away. Or maybe it simply feels like life has been quietly pulling you away from an old version of yourself before you fully understood why. But honestly, when I sit with this energy deeply, I don't feel loss. I feel guidance, not loud, not overly mystical, just small signs appearing at the right moments. A conversation you can't stop thinking about afterward. An unexpected moment of silence that suddenly helps you see what you've been avoiding for too long. An ordinary evening that somehow makes you realize how much your heart has already changed. And honestly, I think Libra is entering a season where intuition becomes more important than ever before. Not logic, not outside noise, but that deep feeling inside yourself when something simply feels right for you. The Star card returns here in the gentlest way, not forcing Libra to have every answer right now. Just softly reminding you that after everything you've walked through, you're still moving towards your own light. And honestly, that feels far more beautiful than trying to control the entire future. Because some paths only reveal themselves after we become brave enough to take a few more steps forward. I keep feeling Libra standing in the middle of a very transitional chapter right now. No longer fully belonging to the past anymore, but not completely inside the new version of yourself yet either. And honestly, that can sometimes feel like one of the loneliest parts of growth, because people don't always see the transformation happening inside you. They don't always realize how much you had to let go of just to protect your peace. But honestly, I think your soul knows, your body knows, your heart knows. There's a reason certain old places no longer fit your energy anymore. There's a reason the things you once held onto so tightly now feel lighter when you finally release them. And honestly, this feels like where the Judgment card comes through very strongly. Not to judge your past, but as the moment someone finally awakens from an old version of themselves. I really feel like Libra is hearing a very deep inner calling right now. A calling toward a life that feels more honest, slower, more peaceful. No longer constantly proving your worth through sacrifice. No longer holding on to things that slowly exhaust your spirit over time. And honestly, what's beautiful about this is that I don't think Libra is becoming a completely different person. I think you're simply returning to the truest version of yourself again. The version of you that was once light, bright, deeply emotional, but buried for too long underneath pressure, expectations, and all the emotional chaos of previous chapters. And now everything feels like it's slowly finding its proper place again. No need to rush. No need to force yourself to heal overnight. Just keep listening to your heart a little longer. Because honestly, some of the most beautiful changes in life never arrive loudly. They arrive quietly, like the very first light appearing outside the window after a long night, soft, gentle, but enough to slowly change the entire room. And maybe that's exactly what the butterfly spirit is gently reminding Libra of right now, that sometimes the most beautiful transformations don't happen through huge life-changing moments, but through the way someone slowly softens toward themselves after so many emotional chapters. And honestly, the 2222 angel number carries such a peaceful feeling here. Not as a promise that everything is suddenly perfect now, but more like a quiet reminder that some things in life simply need time to find their own balance again. And truthfully, I don't know what Libra has had to walk through lately, but I do feel like a softer version of you is slowly returning. Maybe that's why lately you've been wanting to move through life a little slower, love a little softer, and protect your peace more carefully than before. And honestly, I'd really love to know which part of this journey resonated with you the most. And if you're still here with me all the way to the end of this reading, thank you, truly, for spending this quiet little moment with these tarot cards today. And if this kind of energy feels like the kind of space your heart wants to return to on the days your mind needs room to breathe, then maybe you'll want to stay here a little longer with me. But for now, just let everything soften slowly, Libra. There's no need to rush.